Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. I'm Dan Scogan, your host for the Ag Innovation News Podcast. Guests on this podcast shed light on innovations in value-added agriculture, highlight important voices and work that's being done throughout the Minnesota ag sector, and educate the public about resources and organizations that support Minnesota agriculture. Today, we want to welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, Sanchez Philocles. He's a market research analyst for AURI. Sanchez has recently shared with me a summary of market spotlights that he recently completed through an Ag Innovation Center grant through USDA. Sanchez, welcome to the podcast, and let's just start with a little bit about you. Share some of your bio, some of your educational background, and some of your work experience at AURI.
Hi, Dan. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure for me to be here. My name is Sanchez. I'm a market research analyst. I was born and raised in Haiti, and then I got a scholarship to go to college in Honduras, Central America. So I majored in agribusiness management. And then during my senior year, I had an internship at the University of Connecticut. And that was my first time doing academic research, and I liked it and I wanted to go further with it. And then I decided to go for my master's, and I went to Purdue University in Indiana. I did my master in agriculture economics, and then after a while, I worked as a graduate research assistant. And then 2 years ago, the opportunity came up where this position opened at AURI, and I've been the AURI's market research analyst.
For the general public, what does that mean? What's your role at AURI?
Basically, as a market research analyst, I overview everything related to market analysis, market research. I gather market data around different ag industries in Minnesota, helping entrepreneurs for better decision making. I collect public and private data and help entrepreneurs when it comes to the different projects that they have.
And so important because sometimes the entrepreneur understands what their product or process is, but they're wondering how it might fit into the current marketplace. Is that a fair analysis?
Absolutely. That's one of the ways that you can see it. But some of them, sometimes even when they don't want it for a project specifically, some of them want to open their knowledge about specific things related to their industries. So we go ahead and provide and collect market information about the industry that they are in, and then we get the information to them. But most of them, just like you said, they have like some expansion projects, they have some new markets that they want to get into, and they want to know what to expect. They want to know how the industry is going. So we help them on that spectrum.
What are some of the things since you've come to AURI that you get involved with? What are you working on?
One of the first work that I've been doing was on goat meat. So we had a couple of farms. They really wanted to analyze the opportunities to expand goat production in the state. And then we had to do some market research about goat production in the state. And then another one was in aquafeed. So some entrepreneurs, they wanted to open an aquaculture farm, and they wanted also to get into aquafeed, and they wanted to use mealworms as aquafeed. So I had to do some market research on different markets where mealworms can fit into. So those were a little bit more private perspective, and from a public perspective, we have work on A2 milk that we are doing right now. So basically, A2 milk is kind of new type of milk, and many dairy producers, they are asking questions about whether or not market opportunities exist if they convert their herds into A2 genetics. So we're doing some work right now collecting some market information to define the opportunities that exist for A2 milk.
And Sanchez, that's got to be very interesting because you don't know from day to day what you might be researching.
Yeah, I think it's very dynamic. I think every day you wake up and then there's new research, there are new resources that you're looking at. And depending on the needs of the clients, it's always changing. You know, markets are always dynamics. There's always something trending. So it's really important to really keep up to date on things, and that's essential.
Of course, at AURI, we do work with entrepreneurs and organizations trying to uncover new products and processes, and it's always around the value-added agricultural piece. It sounds like you get some hands-on with the entrepreneurs themselves. Is that true? You get to work with the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I work with some of them because the market research process, you have to sit down with them to understand what their ideas are, what is it the problem is. Because even before starting a market research project, we need to agree on a research problem. We need to agree on what is the questions that I need to answer. So I work directly with them, sometimes setting up meetings and understand what their needs are, what the needs for information are, and then how we can get that information, how deep we want to go in the process, and how deep of information that they really need. Some of them may come up with projects and they may come up with some questions that are just the tip of the iceberg, and the problems are bigger than that. But some others are shorter, where you can just do some basic research and it will respond to the question. So yeah, I work with them directly sometimes.
I've heard the scientists at AURI and the project managers both say at different times, sometimes the first question you solve is what is it that the entrepreneur is really looking for or trying to do? Because sometimes they don't know. And you got to kind of steer them down a pathway to discovery.
You touch a great point then, because just like I mentioned, sometimes they bring the issue to you and it's just the tip of the iceberg. They bring a whole question to you, so you have to break that whole questions into more specific questions and pull back and look at the bigger view of what they are asking. And sometimes the questions are not clear enough. You have to go deeper into the research and really see what they're looking for. They come to you with some questions, but in the end you end up responding to different questions.
I think too that the entrepreneur and the market analyst and the scientist, they just have to have kind of an understanding. In your short time at AURI, have some of your findings changed the direction of a project or an entrepreneur's thinking?
Personally, I haven't get direct feedback from some of the clients that I've worked with. I assume I haven't been here long enough to see that, but we do see a couple of switch from there when it comes to their knowledge about specific market dynamics in a certain industry. For example, with the GOAT market research that I've been working on, so the producers that we were working with, we could see the type of new knowledge that we were kind of giving to them, understanding the challenges and the different opportunities that the GOAT market represents in Minnesota. And you could see that they were very happy about it and enlightened about what the market dynamics are and what is it that they really will be facing.
I know getting ready for this particular podcast, you had sent Lisa and she forwarded to me some summaries on some market spotlights that you've been working on. Tell me a little bit about this project. What are these market spotlights all about?
Absolutely. So basically, this comes from the private work that I've been doing with clients. So, coming from those different market research that I've been doing, so one of our ideas was to really provide those same information to the public. So we really want to convey those market information to the public, but in a more straightforward format. So that would not be a big market report. So it would just be a short two-pager document where we go into the nugget. We bring the market information, the essential market information that a typical producer would need. So we decided on 5 to 10 ag and food industries in Minnesota that many people, that farmers and producers are interested about. And we decided to look for public information to really highlight the market opportunities, challenges, and dynamics about those market spotlights. So this is a kind of a follow up of the private work that I've been doing, but really bring those market information to the public now.
And I'm going to have you break those down a little bit for us later on in the podcast. But I understand this project was part of the AIC USDA grant. How did that agreement come about?
Basically, AIC stands for the Agricultural Innovation Center. So it comes from the USDA Rural Development Program. So this program has been around in the early 2000s, and at AURI we were one of the first ag innovation centers in the US. But initially this program was not funded. The funding started a couple of years ago, and the idea was to have different ag innovation centers in the whole US. And right now, at AURI, we are one of the 9 ag innovation centers across the United States. So basically, the program, the ag innovation centers, what we do is we assist agricultural producers interested in developing and market value added products.
It's nice when a grant or a program that's coming out of USDA falls right into the bailiwick of AURI, where you don't really have to change very much or chase very much, but the work that you want to do anyway is covered under this grant. And that's kind of nice when that works out.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head right here.
I do want to break down those market spotlights and what they cover, but I also want to remind our listeners that you're listening to the Ag Innovation News Podcast presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. And our guest today is a market research analyst for AURI, Sanchez Philocles. And Sanchez is walking us through his role at AURI as well as what the market summaries and spotlights are that he's been putting together. So let's go back to those specifically, Sanchez, and break down those market spotlights for me, at least the ones that you sent to me and what they cover.
The very first one that I worked on was the goat meat because it comes from the private work that I was doing with producers. So the first one was goat meat, and all of them are targeted to Minnesota, right? Minnesota production. And the second one was small dairy processing. The third one was specialty oil seed and processing. And we have wool production, oats, hollow meat, turf seed, compost, hemp, and artisan grain. So those are the list of different ag and food industries that I've been working on.
Are they done or are they in process?
They're in process, but most of them are done. We just have to go ahead and publish them. So most of them are completed. So goat meat, small dairy processing, hollow meat, specialty oil seed, wool production, those are all done. We just have to finish the design and they will be published in the AURI website. And the public will have access to all of them.
As an analyst, when you look back at your work, what did you learn?
There is a lot. So I have to go through each one of them to really look at the findings because the findings were different across market spotlights. We may not have time to go through all of them, but I'm gonna break some of them down and really present to you some of the findings. So let's go first with goat meat. So I'm not sure if you knew this, Dan, but Minnesota, we have the highest concentration of Somalis in the US. We have maybe right now around 75 to 76,000 Somalis living in Minnesota based on the Minnesota Demographic Center. And the average Somali consumes 81 pounds of goat meat per year. And if we look at this demand and if we compare it to the local production in Minnesota, we produce around 30,000 goats, right? And then if we make the math and based on the carcass weight of a goat carcass weight of maybe 35 pounds and look at the supply, if we compare the local supply and the local demand, the local supply can only fill 17% of that demand. So the rest of that demand is filled by imports of frozen goat meats from New Zealand and from Australia. So one of the big findings of the goat meat spotlight was the necessity to really push the local processing of goat meat. Right now we have two auctions that facilitate the selling of goats and we have maybe four and very soon five processors here in Minnesota. So it's very limited what we have right now, but it is a big opportunity because the consumption of goat is very enough, for producers to really go to the extra mile and expand their herd and really look at the opportunities for processing in the state. So that was the findings on goat meat.
Sure. What else?
The second one was on small dairy processing. So the big farms and all that. So a small dairy plant based on the MDA definition, it's a plant that processes less than 750,000 pounds of milk per year. We thought it was necessary to really provide some market information to producers, to those dairy producers who are interested in investing in value added products. So, what we did was basically do some market analysis and look at the current products that are being produced right now, the different market channels that small producers used, and the consumption of different value added products. So what we found in the data, so the first product that most small dairy producers produce, the first one is conventional cheese, right? This is the biggest product produced by small processors. And then we have artisan cheese and butter. And we have some others. We have cheese curds by some of them, but it's very insignificant. And what we found next was retail grocery stores and direct to consumer channels are the biggest channels that small processors use the most. And some of them use institutions and others use co-ops, and a very less significant of them use farmers markets to process their products. So that was on the small dairy processing side.
Sanchez, before we move on in the summary of your market spotlights, I mean, you know something about all of these markets that you went and investigated and produced some analysis on. Did you have preconceived notions about how it might go, or do you try to hold your personal thoughts about these markets to yourself as you're doing the research?
First of all, we are all biased, right? But as a researcher, you really try to stay neutral as much as possible and not having, some preconceived ideas that can really have an impact on how you will analyze the data. Personally, I didn't. I don't think those spotlights, those industries, I haven't done work on them before. So when I started collecting the data, maybe let's say for the goat meat, for example, when I started collecting the data and looking at the population in Minnesota, the Somali population in Minnesota, a couple of preconceived ideas about how maybe the supply will look like. But personally, no, I cannot say that I had any preconceived ideas because, yeah, just like I said, those spotlights, it was my first time working on them. So it allowed me to have some objectivity on that side and really present what the data was actually saying.
Okay, let's get back to your spotlight. I think you touched on small dairy processing last. What else would you like to share with us?
I think the other one would be on halal meat. It's a follow up after the goat meat one. So we're going back again with the Somali population, and now we're going broader with the Muslim population. The Somali population is still the most significant Muslim population, but we do have other Muslims from other countries as well. So we found that there was another opportunity for faith based marketing in Minnesota because of the increasing Muslim population. So, what we did was really looking at the data, looking at annual consumption of meat that would be goat meat, on beef, on lamb, and on poultry. So we did some comparison between potential annual consumption of halal meat in Minnesota with the production. So what we found was number one, for lamb, we do have tremendous opportunity for hollow lamb because when we compare the supply with the demand, we see that we're producing enough lamb in Minnesota that could fit into the halal market. But the big question comes from the in the mid size, whether or not we have the processing capacity for it, because halal, under the Islamic law, the slaughtering has to be done in a certain way. So for halal lamb, it all comes down to the processing capacity. And unfortunately for poultry, when we look at the data, poultry, it's very difficult for halal poultry in Minnesota because number one, the production that we have, the poultry by itself, 80 to 90% of the poultry industry is dominated by the big companies that you know of, the Tyson, the other ones. And then we saw that there is very little left in the poultry industry to fit into the halal market. And the other one would be the beef. We saw that beef, there are tremendous opportunities for beef, and just like the lamb industry, it all comes down to the processing capacity. But in terms of production, we really have opportunity to really supply that local demand on hollow. And then for goat, I just mentioned goat. I think hollow goat has tremendous opportunities because 99% of Somalis practice Muslim. So it's a big opportunity for processing on that side as well.
And of course, halal takes into account the production and the processing to be done in a certain way. Is that right?
Absolutely. So it has to respect Islamic law. The slaughtering has to be done by a person from the Muslim faith, and you cannot add chemicals or any things of that sort.
Sanchez, when you look back at your work, and I mean, there's more to do, but who's going to benefit from what you've learned and what you're about to put out to the public?
Number one, the first group of people who will benefit from those research are the producers. And we can help them on two different levels. Number one, on the basic research side of things, which is to just improve their knowledge about the industry that they are in, to really help them with information for better decision making. And number two is for more pragmatic market research questions that they have. So, because we have on those spotlights, on some of them, we have per capita consumption numbers that they can use for their market size, for their market target and segmentation and all that. And the other group would be other researchers, because a lot of those spotlights we used industry where finding public data is a little challenging. So for further research that will be needed in those areas, we do set the tone for some of those industries for further research, for further market research on those areas.
So, how will you get the market spotlights out there? How will the public, or where can they find them, or when can they find them? What's the plan to get the information out?
By the end of November, all of the spotlights will be available on the AURI website, on the Ag Innovation Center program.
And that would be auri.org. And I'll repeat that again at the end of our podcast today. Have you had a chance to talk to USDA and get their reaction to what you're uncovering so far?
No, not yet. I haven't had the chance to talk to the USDA in regards to those spotlights.
And then I think we'll just bring it to a close here today, Sanchez, with final comments from you. Anything you want us to know about this project or the results that it generated, or what do you want to leave us with today?
My final comments would be a lot of those industries, they are very good. Some of them are really stable. Some of them have a lot of gap on the supply side of things where we need more expansion. And some of them are very, or if I can say it like that, some of them are catastrophic and need really some support. So I think it's important for producers to really use data for the decision making. And when they want to look at opportunities for value added, really make sure that they know their numbers and they know what the market is saying about certain industries and certain products before kind of taking that step. So, yeah, those are my final comments. And thank you, Dan, for having me.
Thank you, Sanchez, for spending some time with us today. We've been visiting today with market research analyst for AURI, Sanchez Philocles. I want to thank him for joining me today, and thank you for joining us and listening to the Ag Innovation News podcast presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. Also want to thank our podcast crew, Lisa Martinez, AURI Communications Manager and the editor of this production. To learn more about AURI, go to auri.org.